I'd like to call the meeting to order of Leavenworth Board of County Commissioners. I'd like to invite everyone to stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to start with a moment of silence. We'll do roll call. We'll start with Commissioner Stevens. Here. Mr. Shimke.
Here.
Commissioner Smith is present. Commissioner Collins.
Here.
And Commissioner Culverson.
Here.
All commissioners are present today. I'd like to open up public comment. Anyone from the public wishing to speak, please come forward and state your name.
My name's Kathy Rapp. I am at 26193 Chieftain Road, Lawrence, Kansas.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and County Commissioners. I'm here today on the advice of an attorney to address the Homeworks USA LLC Tiny Homes rezoning request from 2017. This rezoning has concerned me and many of the residents in the 1,000-foot impact zone of Leavenworth and Douglas County for the past 2 years. It appears to us there were some irregular steps, lack of county administration transparency, and violation of Kansas statutes on zoning leading up to the county issuing a building permit in 2019. To set the stage, I would like to read the final exchange during the public discussion of the vote taken on September 28, 2017, referencing the rezoning proposal from Homeworks USA LLC. At the completion of my statement, I would like this printed statement to be made part of the public record. Mr. Joseph, there are no conditions because it's a denial from the Planning Commission right now, so there are no conditions associated with it. Mr. Smith, okay, is there a motion? Mr. Kemp, would you explain the motion to me? Mr. Smith, to approve the planned unit development and the zoning change. Mr. Joseph, the zoning change is to planned unit development, and then there is also a preliminary plat. Mr. Smith, okay. Mr. Kemp, this would ultimately have to come back before the board. Mr. Joseph, yes, sir, they would have to come back for a special use permit for the actual use. Mr. Kemp, and there will be conditions. Second, Mr. Smith voting. Mr. Holland, Mr. Smith, Mr. Kemp all voted aye. Mr. Smith, with that being said, they will have to come back to the board with conditions and special use, conditional use permit. As the public record indicates, Homework USA LLC would be required to apply for a special use or conditional use permit with conditions. It was expected these permits would outline specific rules and enforcement requirements. A special use or conditional use permit is open to protest under Kansas law for those within the 1,000-foot impact radius. On October 9, 2017, legal representation for Homeworks USA appeared before the Commission with a request for clearing of a technical issue on the resolution for Homeworks USA rezoning request. At this time, the two county commissioners present voted to remove the technical issue and the SUP. On October 10th, I received notification of the October 9th meeting. After reviewing the online recording, my husband and I met with Mr. Joseph, the County Planning and Zoning Department, in person on October 11. He assured us that a special use permit was still required and building permits would not be issued without such a permit. He said notices would be posted on the property 2 weeks prior to the meeting at which the special use permit would be on the agenda. When apparent construction began on the site during the week of August 21st, 2019, I contacted Crystal in the Planning and Zoning Department, which revealed building permits had been issued. When I questioned how they were issued, despite being told in person a special use permit was still required following the October 9th vote, I was informed that a state statute had been allowed to allow the building permits to be issued without the SUP. Clearly confused by these known facts and lack of transparency, I contacted my county commissioner, Mr. STIEBEN, who was also under the impression the issue would be before the board again. Mr. STIEBEN suggested I call Planning and Zoning and find out which state statute the ruling was based on. On Friday of that same week, August 23rd, I spoke with Mr. Joseph and received the same answer. A state statute had been applied, and it was at the direction of the county legal counsel. On Monday, August 26th, I spoke with Mr. Van Perry's, who was confused why building permits were issued without the SUP, and that I had been told it was on notice from his office regarding a state statute. It is my understanding that on Tuesday, the 27th of August, 2019, a staff meeting was held on this subject. Mr. Van Perry's called me on August 28th, 2019, to inform me of a September 28, 2017 commission vote to remove the SUP from the requirements which allowed for issuing a building permit. There appears to be total confusion on the issue with different answers, almost as though subterfuge is part of the process. If there was such a vote on September 28th of 2017, it was in closed session and not part of the public hearing. Why then did Mr. Crow, the pro bono attorney for Homeworks USA LLC, before the commission on October 9th to get Condition 2 and the SUP removed, if supposedly it had already been removed? I have like another 2 minutes.
Does she have leave to give the rest of her statement?
Sure. We're not going to decide anything today. We're just
Right.
listening.
Okay. If supposedly it had already removed, why did Mr. Joseph assure us that such a condition was still on the October 11th, was still a requirement on October 11th following 2 supposed votes to remove the SUP? Why was I given 2 different separate answers to the question? Further, I contend that the removal of an SUP is in violation of Kansas Statute 192960, requiring written notification of property owners on a public hearing for zoning requests or modifications. No notification on the zoning change, SUP status or removal has been mailed, posted, or published. A protest petition in the Douglas County impact range was actually circulated and signed by a number of residents in 2018 under the belief that an SUP was a requirement. What is the actual truth on the legality of this removal? What legal requirements has Homeworks USA LLC met, and what requirements other than an SUP have or may have been waived to receive the building permits? With no SUP in place, are there any licensing requirements? Without an SUP, is there any enforcement for the conditions of transportation and a social worker promised in the presentation? Finally, it is questionable that such zoning violation could be considered spot rezoning, which itself is debatedly not legal and is a violation of Kansas 192958. And can I present a copy? Would I present my copy too?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and move on to administrative business. Administrative business for us.
I have 2 things. One is the Safety Days review, which I'll have Stephanie Sloop present on. But first, we've been trying to coordinate a joint Planning and Zoning Commission meeting with this board and the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we've had a few, I think 3 attempts where it just hasn't worked out for everybody. So what I would ask today is if this board would be interested in potentially just meeting prior to one of the normally scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. Therefore, there we know they're all going to be there, and then if you 5 could make it, it would be a
That's a Wednesday night.
It'd be Wednesday. The next one is the 9th. They meet at 6 p.m. If we could meet at like 5 p.m.
Okay, yeah, because I got Baser
Yeah.
City Council.
So and then hopefully, you know, if it takes a little longer an hour, we can bleed into their time a little bit, and okay. Hopefully that way everybody should be able to make it if that works out.
Yes.
So
I
next
can be
Wednesday
there.
at 5 p.m.
It'd be the 9th
September
at
9th.
September 9th.
5 p.m.
5 o'clock? Yeah. Right here?
Yes. Yep. They meet
I
here.
cannot make that night, but
Aren't you just a problem child?
don't let that hold you up.
Members of the planning.
Before I be there, that's fine with me.
And then the next way we could move it out to October if you guys.
It's up to you guys. I just can't make that night. I have a former.
What day would it be?
The 9th is a Monday.
Is it a Monday or a Wednesday?
But it's September 11th, I'm sorry, September 11th. So.
Is it a Wednesday?
September 11th.
It's a Wednesday. Yeah, it's a Wednesday.
Yeah, it's the night of our normal meeting.
9/11.
Yeah, that Wednesday night is, I can't make.
You can make the Wednesday night then.
I can't make the 11th.
Can't make the
Or
11th.
that Wednesday. That's Wednesday, right?
Yeah, next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah, next Wednesday
So then,
I cannot make.
October?
Do you want to try October or
October will be fine.
What's the date in October?
the 9th? Oh, that's where I got the 9th from.
Okay.
It's the 9th of October?
Yeah.
I'm possibly, I don't know, I'm going to be at a Kansas Board of Realtors
Right.
deal that week. I don't think I can make it. I guess one of us won't make it anyway.
Should we, I don't know that maybe meeting twice wouldn't be the worst thing, knowing how many commission members there are. I mean, getting a chance to hear from everybody's going to take some time anyway. Why don't we try to do
September
the
and
11th,
October?
the 11th, yeah, September and October.
Okay.
And that
I'm
way,
fine with that.
you both get some time.
Yep.
Okay. So next week, Wednesday,
And then the
at 5
first
o'clock, then we will amend our schedule for next week to show that meeting.
They meet the second Wednesday of the month.
And we'll reach out to them and hopefully they
That
can
would
make
be-
it
So that
by
needs to be
5
added to
o'clock.
the agenda.
So,
And we'll reach out to them and see if they can be here early at 5 o'clock. And then obviously we'll let them know that October is our planned one as well. So we went back and forth and it just seems like every time we run into a conflict when we try to schedule a special meeting, so.
We'll just schedule two.
hard to do meetings.
Cover it
could-
with two.
We can meet the planning board this month and the BZA next month.
Okay, sounds good.
And then I'll have Stephanie come up and talk about our safety days.
Hello,
Hi, how are
Commissioner.
you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so the Safety Committee is holding Leavenworth County Safety Day next Friday, September 13th at the Riverfront Community Center. It's going to be from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock. We have a variety of organizations coming to provide information to county employees. Lunch is going to be provided by 2 food trucks that are local food trucks. Every employee that attends and the vendors will each get a free meal ticket. Last year, we had about 160 employees attend. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Safety days on Friday the 13th. Okay.
That's awesome.
I plan on being there, maybe. I was going to try to get to the state fair.
Any of the commissioners?
I'll
want
be
to
Stop
there.
by.
I'll be there.
I'll be stopping by.
Okay, good. All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you for all the
Thanks,
hard
Stephanie.
work you do in putting this together.
What kind of food trucks are going to be
Oh,
there this
sorry,
year?
we're having Low and Slow Barbecue and Mido's Food Truck, so Greek and barbecue. Something for everyone.
David will
There
be
you go.
there.
Good problem.
Good job, Steph.
Thank you.
Doug, I had a question.
Yes, sir.
Maybe this would be for, on the tiny homes issue, would that be a matter that we would discuss in executive session, or would that what would be the context of us visiting about that?
Commissioner Stephen, members of the commission, good morning. David Van Paris. I've had discussion with Ms. Rapp, and I'd like to state that she's been very courteous and professional in her comments, and I do appreciate that, and I think everyone should. Ms. Rapp has brought some issues before myself, Mr. Joseph. As Ms. Rapp kindly stated in the very beginning of her presentation, she has sought legal counsel, and as such, I believe it'd be most appropriate to conduct any further discussions of this in executive session and communications with her attorney.
Just so we can be all updated, is that something we could do, like put on next week's agenda or something?
Presuming that an event occurs which would necessitate that, yes, or we could put it on just for myself to give you a review
Well,
of the
I just
matter.
kind of want to have the.
Certainly, at your leisure.
Okay. Any other administrative business?
So did the board want us to add an executive session to next week's agenda to discuss this item, or just to wait until any further action is needed by?
We could have one just to be
Yeah,
updated.
yeah, because
I just want to be
pretty
clear.
much 4 new commissioners here
Okay.
when it comes to this issue.
Commissioners, I'll be prepared to give you a briefing on the matter next Wednesday.
Okay, and then President of the Homeowner Association wanted to know about getting on the agenda for the Timber Lakes 148th Street, or would it be better for him to come up in the public comment?
That's another one of those items that's come before the board multiple times, and typically we just would say, come to,
Public comment.
Public comment if they want to bring it to our attention, but there's, to my knowledge, and I have been in contact with them, nothing has changed as far as the conditions of the streets that they want to come and talk about, so there would be no reason for us to
have him bring public comment then.
There's another issue that I was recontacted by the Kansas City Business Journal regarding their open records request, waiving of the fees associated with that in order to receive the open records that they're requesting. So I cannot unilaterally say, oh, well, we're going to, so I don't know how the remaining members of the commission feel that about waiving the fees associated, since we have recently changed our policy that indicates that, there's a set fee schedule, and so I would like to be able to give her a response.
Like, how much are we talking about?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I was contacted by the Kansas City Business Journal. They're requesting the names, job title, and salaries or compensation for every county employee, based upon the fact that I'm not certain if such a document exists, and if such a document exists, there may need to be, there will be a need to review it to redact any personal information that should not be provided. That I did ask for a deposit with an estimated fee, I believe, of $50. It may have been $75, which she has asked to be waived. Again, that's an estimate. I'm not sure what the final cost might be. You do have a policy to extend a courtesy response to individuals. This is a unique situation. It has not been, I've not been contacted by an entity such as, I believe, a for-profit corporation, or even if it's set up as a not-for-profit corporation. The Kansas City Business Journal is established. I don't believe they have any desire to do anything other than make this accessible to the public, but I believe it would require some staff time to respond to this, and that was the basis for my request for an estimated payment for fee. They have requested that it be waived.
How do we typically handle that, like with,
I just don't respond to Mr.
So just to be clear, the request was that information on 400-plus employees that work at the county?
Commissioner Shimke, the Leavenworth Times has been very judicious in requesting information. We provide that to them. They're your official county newspaper. They're a source of local news. They are provided information upon request. With respect to the Kansas City Business Journal, we receive courtesy copies of that. I believe there's one out in your foyer right now. It is an established enterprise. The issue is with 400-plus employees, it will be necessary to review those records, redact them for, again, personal identifying information that is not an open record, and I believe it's going to require more than a minimal amount of staff time.
I just want to be able to respond to her.
Right.
So that, no, we won't waive the fee, or yes, we will. That's why I just was, or to have our counselor respond to her that yes, we will, or no, we won't.
Pretty tall order. I mean,
Did they indicate how, like, typically other government entities across the state, how they've, do they typically provide this, or?
Commissioner Stieben, I am aware that this Kansas City Business Journal has obtained such information and made it available in the past.
From us?
Yeah, no, I'm not certain from Leavenworth County, but I do know from other local governments.
I guess in interest of transparency, I think it would probably.
Commissioner,
you're okay with the Leavenworth County taxpayers paying for staff to work on a document for somebody outside the county?
Well, I'm just okay, I guess I'm okay with providing the information.
We just cover our costs.
Yeah, we have to provide the information.
We have
It's
to
open
provide it, but
records.
we're just trying to cover our
Do
costs
we
as staff.
waive the fee associated
Yeah.
with providing the records? That's the question, and this is, it came back. I think the request is close to a month old, so I just figured that at some point we need.
Are the ads free that are in the Business Journal?
No.
I'm not certain, Commissioner. I believe they are, however.
Not free.
Well, maybe Steve Jack could answer that question.
Welcome.
Are the ads free in the Kansas City Business Journal?
No, they're not.
Okay.
That's
That
my
answered your question, didn't it?
Yep.
That answer your question? Okay.
Commissioners, I will respond to the, first of all, a request was made. It was responded to within appropriate time.
Right.
I'll follow up on the additional request that's been made to Commissioner KAAZ.
Except we're just trying to cover our costs. That's all we're trying to do. That's my opinion. And we do that even with county residents.
We could trade them for free advertising.
Yeah, well, you could do that, maybe.
I'll see what I can work out with them.
You gonna authorize the county council, senior county councilor to barter?
So say they want a list of how much every employee makes and the name of every employee.
Commissioner, that is an open record information.
Right.
The issue is you are allowed by state law to, as Commissioner Smith referenced, cover your costs with 400-plus employees and the need to review them before providing that, to redact any personal identifying information. There will be some time, staff time spent on it, more than just a minimal amount.
Okay. All right. Any other administrative business?
Yeah, I mean, if we're required to provide it, fine. We're not required to waive the fee.
Right.
I still can't even understand the validation of the request, so you probably don't want to know what I think.
There's a legal principle, Commissioner Shimke, it never hurts to ask.
That's why you ask for forgiveness instead of forgiveness.
There you go.
Okay, if there's no further administrative business, then as commissioners had a chance to look at the consent agenda, and we will be adding the planning and zoning to the agenda for next week. Any questions, concerns on the consent agenda items?
Nope. I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? And that is with adding planning and zoning meeting, okay? Voting?
Aye.
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 Abstain?
Aye.
All right. Motion carried. All right. We ready for approval of the agreement
Yes.
with the recruitment firm?
Commissioners, a few weeks ago, we began the discussion of retaining a recruitment firm to assist in the hiring of a Public Works Director position. Last week, we conducted a work session to review the proposals and to meet with the firms that submitted proposals. At the end of that work session, the Board of County Commissioners in attendance asked me to put this on as a regular agenda item for consideration this week. At that time, Austin Nichols was the firm that the board asked me to move forward with. They had a few adjustments to their original proposal. They extended the amount of their warranty, or guarantee, I guess I should say, to 12 months, and they lowered their fee to 25%, which is contingent upon them hiring and finding for us a suitable applicant.
Better than what we left it. Have any questions, concerns? I know you weren't available.
Nope, I'm good with whatever.
Okay.
The remainder, majority.
Okay. Well, it was a lengthy process. I think it was.
Yes.
I felt good about it at the end of it.
I was just going to ask Mark, it's not in the fee agreement that was sent. Every one of the firms made it clear that once a candidate is placed, they basically remove them from their database not to be recruited while under employment. Do we have that in writing anywhere? Not that I don't trust that every one of them said it, and that should be a fairly standard and moral practice, but.
I can get that from Austin Nichols if you'd like. I know they did state that, and they do say that that is part of their, I guess their business model. So that's probably why they don't include it in here, but that is one of their things, and I can have them include it certainly.
I think that'd just be good. Again, he said it, I trust they all said it.
They all said it, so I didn't thought
writing
industry standard maybe, I don't know. They're supposed to accept that.
Yeah, I think it's assumed, but I've learned
An assumption that life flows for me.
That's right. But that was all I had.
That's good. Any other questions on it? Have anything else to add? Mr. Crawford?
I think that, like I said before, all of the firms were very competent and capable of doing this. I think in the interview process that Austin Nichols did present themselves.
Came down to a scoring.
Right.
So that's what it came down to. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the agreement with Austin Nichols for the recruitment of a public works director.
With the addition of the non-recruitment clause.
Okay.
And I'll have them add that.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with Austin Nichols to provide recruitment services for the position of the Public Works Director on a contingent fee basis with the inclusion that they will not recruit any applicants that we would hire.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? None. Voting?
I'd like to abstain.
Okay.
Aye.
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 Okay. We're ready for Counseling on Aging. Morning, Linda. How are you today?
Morning.
Well, good morning. We're here to ask for the board's chairman's signature on a revision to our budget with additional funds that are available to us from the state. And I brought our account specialist so she could have this experience in case she didn't. So this is Jackie Davis. So
Jackie, nice to meet you.
But this is just additional funds that we would receive, but we have to have the chairman's signature.
Just
Mine,
one
that chairman
signature,
is
huh?
already signed.
Just one signature, huh?
It's a lot of signatures.
All right.
I don't see rejecting any additional funds for the
I hope
Council on
not.
Aging.
I would hope not. Commissioners have any questions or concerns on the revised budget?
What was the amount?
It's around $2,000. It's not much.
It's incremental.
Do that every week and you got some.
I'm telling you.
All right.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
So I'll entertain a motion to authorize the chairman to sign the budget revision.
So moved.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
That was painless,
That
right?
was, yeah, that was just to get Jackie come back. All right. We're ready for Aaron, I believe. And Lauren.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Morning.
The RBA that I put before you this morning is for carpet at the Justice Center. It was a rollover from last year that I just didn't get to until this year because I was pressed for time. I put out an RFP that I had 3 companies come to a mandatory pre-bid meeting. Of those 3 companies, I had 2 of them bid. The lowest was a local company, Seifert Flooring. The items are budgeted I have 60,000 on my 215 account, and then I have an 18,000 in this year's account for floor maintenance and that. I'm asking for up to $78,000 worth of hard surface and carpet at the Justice Center.
We pushed it out another year. Got another year's worth out of it.
If you walk through the back entrance in the Circle Drive, you don't really want to push it out another year. And the reason I would like to use the 18 out of floor maintenance account is I don't really feel that cleaning carpet that's not savable is a good idea. I would rather use that money towards new carpet and us preserving it and putting new in and moving forward.
I agree.
Aaron, I'm just curious, in like those high traffic areas, if we looked at like a hard surface
We have
versus
a mixture.
carpet?
The flooring that I had bid, what I did was a unit price. So basically, it was a single unit price. It was a single unit price for carpet removal, base removal, furniture moving and replacing, carpet installation, base installation, and then a hard flooring installation. The hard flooring that we have as an option for high traffic areas as well as a high traffic carpet is based on carpet that is already going in the jail currently, so we stuck with that style so that we have continuity through the building. And the hard surface is the hard surface that the Leavenworth Police Department has already started putting in their cafeteria areas and their smaller areas where there's water in that, so we went with that style as well. From those, we'll have a short walk-off carpet in the doorway areas that are the extreme high traffic areas, so then that way we're causing less damage to our actual flooring.
What's your typical practice when you're cleaning carpets in the physical plant? Do you bring in an outside contractor, or do you?
Correct. We do have an outside contractor that cleans carpets for us. It is on an annual contract basis for each of our facilities that we have here. We have money budgeted for it. The cleaning practices is normally an extraction. It should be done with a soap and water first, or a solution first, and then a neutral rinse, and then a water clean afterwards. Very few companies actually do all three processes, which is why your stains reappear and you get the same dirt in the same spots, because they never actually remove the stain.
Any other questions of Aaron on this? And this other company's not local?
No, sir. The other company is out of Platte City. Seaford's Flooring is based out of Tonganoxie and was the lowest on the bid.
He could have been 5% higher and got it.
Yes, sir, he could have, but he actually was the lowest overall and is local.
Yep. Now he's a special use permit home-based business, a very successful business. They do good work. They've done a lot of work for the county in the past.
He has done work for the county in the past. As recently, I believe he was the one who installed the hard surface for the police department.
Yes, sir. Well, I've seen him up here working. But anyway, so if there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the low bid for Seifert Flooring.
I'll make motion to approve the bid in accordance with Leavenworth County purchasing policy for Seifert's Flooring, not to exceed $78,000.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? None. We're voting.
Aye.
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 Have you heard anything back?
Right.
I called him yesterday.
He hasn't called you back?
No, sir. I contacted him twice. Okay.
Just one signature?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Didn't need to.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. All right, Lauren,
Good morning, Commissioners.
how are you today?
I am good, thank you. So I brought to you two requests for board action this morning. One, I apologize, I mistakenly left Aaron's name on, but it is presented by myself, obviously, for a addendum to the contract to include construction services with Schlegel for the dust abatement program for groups 1, 2, and 3 to include inspection during the construction process.
What
Do you
is-
have any questions?
Yeah, what is the difference between that and what our management firm, that we hired
Recently?
recently? It just kind of seems there's a little bit, maybe some doubling up on, or is this engineering design of the new,
This is to actually have somebody on the ground during construction to make sure, to collect tickets, to check quantities, to make sure that they're following the practices that were agreed upon, that we are getting the roadway that was agreed to be getting during the construction, opposed to the gentlemen that are in-house helping with engineering services and project management of shuffling around all the pieces.
We did bring this up probably a month and a half ago when we started with the process of putting them in, that the board agreed that we should have inspection services on these projects. And at that time, we engaged Schlegel to provide us a proposal. This is something that Olson and Associates could provide for us. Quite frankly, the cost would be less money using Schlegel, and they are familiar with the program because they designed it, which is why we're making the recommendation for Schlegel and Associates.
I just wanted to get all that clarified, so
Sure.
if anybody had any questions.
Okay. Well,
What was the initial contract value with Schlegel for? Because this is really an amendment to.
So it was really done, I believe, originally on like an hourly for the design, and I do not recall the total dollar
Like
amount
10.
that was anticipated at that time. That's been a year and a half ago, I think, so I don't recall the total amount, but we can definitely get that for
We
you.
can look into that. But I do believe you'll see several of the same people on here, Jay Caddick, Mark Brewer. They were on the original contract as well, so this is just an extension of their hours from design into the construction phase of things, and then additionally their inspector and things like that that were not on the initial.
And this is kind of a follow-up to even conversations from last week. The idea here is, this was some of the scope that was not included in the initial contract with Schlegel because of the road type we were using at the time. We've now switched the application type. It has, there are conditions that now might include, utilities or otherwise that.
I'm not exactly sure what the conditions were to not include it in the first place. I know it is very common that we will hire somebody for the design, we get them contracted with that, and then we could occasionally hire the same person for construction services, but not always. So it is very common to have two separate contracts for this, to have two separate people or two separate signings for this.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, I don't know what the exact, cost is, both in investment or time of mobilizing a contractor, them getting to a site, and then ultimately not being able to do the job because some of the scope here wasn't covered in the initial agreement. So I just want to make sure that even though this is not an insignificant amount of money, it's obviously going to stop that potential from occurring.
And I think what initiated this were some of the issues we had with last year's construction cycle with some of the projects that were completed last year that we didn't have inspection services on, that then made it difficult for us to determine maybe why there were some failures. And that's what instigated this conversation. Since we started this conversation, we ran across the other issues, which I was going to bring up actually, so I'll do that now, such as the utility locates and relocates. That were also excluded from the original agreement that we have now addressed, and going forward we have somebody working on that. Unfortunately, and that's what I was going to talk to you about, because of that, reaching out to the utilities, so far pretty much every roadway that we've started to do these locations on, there's been conflict. Both contractors have reached out to us with concerns about that. Obviously, one of them was going to struggle to get the project done this year anyways because of the wet season. They were backed up on some of their other projects. So they had already reached out to us about maybe delaying this. The utilities being in the way just made it, I guess, confirmed that that's probably going to have to happen. We've heard from AT&T, they're giving us a 120-day estimate to remove any of the utilities, which puts us well outside the construction cycle for this year, or season for this year. So bearer of bad news twice. One, we need to amend the agreement with Schlegel so we can get these services provided that were not included originally. And two, the dust abatement projects that have not yet been complete will not be complete this year. It's just not feasible to get the utilities moved, get the projects done before the end of the construction cycle. We are reaching out. One of the contractors, like I said, kind of asked us to already push this off, so we're confident that we'll be able to work that out with them. The other firm we will reach out to and see if they will put us first on their list for next year and agree to honor the contract or the pricing that we've already got in place. If not, then we will likely go back out for bid on that project rather than, since they really haven't started any construction, rather than do a change order for that project, we would probably just go back out for bid unless the contractor agrees to honor pricing from this year, in which case we'll go forward. Now, what I'm not sure on yet is where this puts us with the dust abatement programs that were supposed to happen next year. That would be 5 and 6?
4 and 5.
4 and 5, okay. So I'm confused because we have a 7 in here somewhere.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that happened.
4 and 5, so the groups 4 and 5 then, because these projects are being moved off, I'm not sure if that will allow us to get those done next year or not. We will certainly try, but there's some prep work that our crews have to do out in front of this construction, and so that's a lot of miles for them to handle before construction starts. But we'll keep you up to date on that. But today I wanted to let you know that Group 1 is 95% done, I believe. 2, 3, and 7 we're scheduled to do this year are not going to get done this year, and 4 and 5 may not get done next year because we're moving 2, 3, and 7 back.
Is there any way we could expedite the prep work for 4 and 5 by maybe contractors or some kind of?
We did ask about that. So the challenge there being, I mean, our crews are very good at doing it. It's going out inspecting tubes, replacing tubes, putting in a rock where it needs to be done. That's the most affordable approach. If we contract it out, just a rough estimate that we received was, I think, $60 to $80 per foot, and I think they said it could go more than that depending upon where we were at, and if that included materials and everything else. So yes, that's an option, but it's an expensive option, and we wouldn't even know the total cost until we get our guys out to inspect the tubes to see which ones have to be replaced.
Yeah, but and I'm assuming, or at least hoping, that this amendment or addendum changes this, but to even be doing utility locates at this point in the season, knowing that there could be complication, in which case pushes us well outside of our construction window.
And some of this is on the contractors because it was in the agreement that they were supposed to get this handled before they came out. But that's not typical for most of these. Usually it's handled by the design firm. For whatever reason, specifically was requested that they not do it on these projects, and the scope of the projects changed. We went from a chip seal application to an asphalt, and then, which, again, the asphalt overlay that we just completed on one doesn't disturb the surface, so there was they didn't have to worry about the utilities being in the way, other than in the future if we have construction, or if they need to work on those lines, they're going to have to tear up our asphalt. When we went to the other alternate, which was the base stabilization, they're going to be disrupting the top of the soil, so that led to, we have to do utility locates, and that's when this all kind of came up. So change in process created some of this. Outside the normal process created some of it for the contractors. I'm sure they missed that in the original agreement that they were responsible to do these utility locates way out, or relocates way out in front. And for whatever reason, I believe it should have been just included to begin with how it normally is, which is the design firm should have been managing it for us, and it's what we do on all of our other projects. And we've made the change. Going forward, this is how it will be handled, and it won't, as you said, it won't lead to this contractor gets on site and realizes there's a problem. Some of that's on them, first of all. That's not all us because they were supposed to do it, but let's just get it out of, eliminate the potential for confusion and getting wires crossed, and just handle it the way we do on all of our other projects.
But Commissioner Shimke, I would like to point out that is not included within this addendum. The utility coordination and potential relocation will be
we have addressed it with them. It's just not part of this addendum. It is something they will be providing.
So I think everybody's probably seen a number of projects be slowed by utilities. This isn't the first, and will not be the last. Is it primarily AT&T as far as these projects go specifically? Is it a number of different utilities? Like, and I'm curious, Lauren, like, who do you get to talk to at AT&T, or do you get to call the same 800 number that I do, which is
on
close
these
to making you
projects,
jump off the top of the buildings?
on these projects, it is primarily AT&T. That is not the case on all projects. We do run into them across the county, but they are not always what causes the delays. We have contact information with a direct line with AT&T. I have not spoken with them directly. That is something that both Schlegel and Olson have been coordinating. But we do have a contact.
Because I'm also curious, again, you know, these are non-engineered projects, so we're not talking about moving, you know, again, I knew we weren't moving water lines or gas lines or,
Right.
You know, I'm trying to understand the process. Like, when does a utility company come forward and say, this is no longer a viable asset? Like, this is, you know, a 50-year-old line and there's no utilization of it.
That was something that we have requested them to at least take a look at, and that is something that they did take a look at in these cases. Each of them are still active lines, whether it be on those particular roadways or whether it be further down the line. They are feeding into someone somewhere. Unfortunately, none of the lines that we know of that we have run into are dead lines. But it is something that we have requested they look into.
Okay.
And it's our fault. We're letting
yeah.
utility companies run down the middle of the road or on the shoulder. We don't have an identified spot in the right-of-way for the utilities. They get to run the utilities wherever they want.
Yeah.
The county doesn't do anything about it.
And that's pretty much the case on all these where the phone line runs down the shoulder in the driving
Should have
surface.
never been allowed.
All the way, the whole length of these projects, so
It
it's
just
not like a
seems like-
cross line. And
I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but if there's, you know, one or two users impacted by a line versus subdivisions or miles of homes, those are not one and the same. So
it's a call that the utility company gets to make, and unfortunately, they don't include us in their decision-making model.
Right.
And if you look in our utility policy, that line's supposed to be 24 inches deep. And it's maybe 6 to 8 inches deep.
So it seemed to me, I mean, if that's the policy and they didn't abide by it, cut it.
We've tried to avoid doing that because they then send us a bill for the work that they end up doing. They are required to remove it when it's in conflict with our projects at their cost, and they are. It's
At
just
their convenience.
well, somewhat, yes.
And so they're picking the 120-day timeline. They could have told us 6 months or 2 years, just this time it was 120 days.
That's usually what they tell you. No, they usually tell you 18 months.
Which could cost us thousands of dollars.
Well, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Prices go up.
Right, inflation.
Yeah, I mean,
About 4.5%.
what is the ramifications that we just?
And oh, by the way, when they got to
really
fix that line that's under the asphalt, have a pretty rough time getting them to pay for that too.
They just put rock back in the hole.
Commissioners, I don't wish to bore you by going into a long diet or dissertation as a difference between negligent and intentional acts. I do think that the county's utility policy does warrant consideration. In the past, the county was very lenient with public utilities in allowing them to utilize your right-of-way. I'll go so far as to say I think that courtesy has been abused. We have had instances where our our mowing equipment cuts cables. Now, they're required to be 18 inches underground. I don't think our mowers are digging that deep. I think in a review of the utility accommodation policy, not only the future use of the county right-of-way should be considered, but also some form of an inspection fee to ensure that the county is provided with more or less an as-built plan as to the location of the utility and how it's installed in your right-of-way.
I agree.
A lot of times they'll go out there and run the cable before you know they're doing it.
Commissioner Shimke, we've had an instance where the county cut a cable that was laid on the surface of a bridge. The utility companies, I'm not disparaging them, they provide a very valuable service, but there does need to be some form of oversight in their use of your right-of-way. The public pays for it, the public maintains it, And it's costly when these oversights on the part of the utility companies occur.
Great.
And this all touches back on what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago with changing either legislation or local policy sharing of GIS data with DigSafe. DigSafe has all the information we need, but they're not required to turn it over to the county. So
Yet they're dependent on us.
Exactly.
Right.
So
Where they got it.
I think we need to address that.
Put that on your legislative list for the next session.
The growing.
What, so group 2 and group 3, total number of miles
We say like 12 and a half miles.
Russ
Says
is
over
12 and a
10,
half,
right?
13, I believe, something along those lines. yeah.
that we had committed to in 19,
Yes.
all of which will be moving to 20.
Yes.
The alternative is a very expensive
I don't think
situation that we
there's-
don't want to
yeah.
move down.
I don't think there really is an alternative, because even if we changed and went to asphalt only instead of base stabilization, we'd still be asphalting over the top of what we now know are utility lines,
Right.
which isn't good. We would want
Essentially
those-
asking for them to come
They'd have to
in,
dig
tear
them
up our
up.
asphalt in the
They should
future.
have to pay for that. They do it.
Right. There are some other things that we would want to address when we have the opportunity. And the utility relocations on this portion of it is being handled by Olson and Associates because they're already on staff.
Yes, they are coordinating
It
this
doesn't
already.
require an amendment to any
Okay,
agreement.
that's-
So that's why they are handling the utility relocations on the rest of these.
What kind of a time frame are we talking about to where we will know, like for next year's projects, which ones we can accomplish and which ones we can't, and that kind of thing?
Ask
Well,
Mother Nature.
Yeah, right. If we can get the
Let's just
AT&T
go
lines
ballpark.
moved, and we can get the two firms that we've already engaged to commit to sticking with that and putting them on the first part of next year, then we should get those done hopefully as soon as the weather turns to where they can get asphalt. How that impacts the ones that were scheduled for 2020, we really won't know until our crews have a chance to get out. And the weather will play. If we have another winter like last winter, then there's no way we'll get to the roads that we need to get that done in 2020.
So you're saying every road in there has utilities that's in it?
So far, the ones that they've called in on, they've ran into utilities.
So that they still could be some other roads that don't have any utilities in the way?
Yes, so for the group in 4 and 5, we're going ahead and moving forward with AT&T locates to make sure that the future contractors, whoever it is that we bid with, do not run into the
So
same
all of 2
problem.
and 3 has
From what we have
utilities in
found,
the
yes.
way?
Yes, from what we have found to this point, almost the entirety of all of the roads that have been located have AT&T.
Is it the whole road, or is it just like where they went around a culvert or something?
It is my understanding that as County Administrator said, it runs down the entire length of the road on the.
Surely there's
within-
phone lines deeper than 8 inches deep through.
Some is, some isn't. They've gone out and potholed and found that many of these will come in conflict with the base stabilization. And they have found it running down the inside of the roadway on just about every road.
So you said that somebody specifically said for them not to do the locates. Who was that, or how did that process work?
That was a service that was intentionally removed when the agreement was entered into back in 17, or the first part of 18.
As a non-engineered, pave-in-place, chip and seal, this would have no impact.
That would have, right.
Those roads obviously fail.
So there was no
So
need for them
should-
to provide that
should
service.
July roads.
But when we changed to base stabilization, that created a conflict, so.
So the money we saved on that is not going to pay off.
Well, I think it's still a pretty significant savings. It just
Well,
moves the
we go in
project off.
Next year and the prices go up.
Well, again, we're hopeful that the two contractors will honor the pricing that we've already received. And one of them has indicated they needed to move it off on their own request anyway, so we're confident that'll happen for that group at least.
Well, we need to get tougher on these utilities. That's all there is to it. And it's just job after job.
Can we have that work session where we look at not only utility policy revisions, but include that Dig Safe initiative that Mr. Culbertson has brought up numerous times.
I have written it down that we need to do a review of that policy, and obviously for these projects, we've addressed it going forward. Any projects we do, we've addressed it, but we will.
Because typically, I mean, this is, you'd actually like to get it out before the fourth quarter and actually send it to your utility partners and let them know about your policy change for 2020 and beyond.
Yeah.
Set an expectation.
It would only impact any new projects that they do. So, but yeah, we'll get it on an agenda for a work session.
But again, it's also understanding there's policies in place, and that if they've not abided by them, who's responsible? Because had they done the work correctly,
at the correct depth, it wouldn't be.
Wouldn't be an issue.
Wouldn't be an issue.
So I think that we need
true.
to.
But they're moving them at no cost.
They have to move them
time.
one way or the other. It's just how it impacts our projects.
It's not ours.
maybe we should put
Maybe
that
we
in
should
policy.
request that they
Have to move it within 60 days.
all of them.
I was going to say 60 minutes.
Oh, 60 minutes, okay.
That are, identified as being, that needs to be done within a specific period of time, or we reserve the right to cut them.
And we will definitely look at our policies when we bring that forward, but I will tell you that the state statutes are incredibly favorable to especially telecommunications when it comes to utilities in the right-of-way.
I would agree, if they're being used.
And that's up to them to determine. We can't
Sure.
ask for verification.
Yeah,
So.
Love the transparency.
But, okay, any more discussion on the change here? I'll entertain a motion to approve the contract for additional construction services, phase services.
Motion to approve addendum to contract for additional construction phase services to Schlegel and Associates, not to exceed $53,188. Is that?
I do initially, yes. I've included a contingency on the chance that it did run over in case the hours, they only included anticipated hours. So
With a 10% contingency of $5,318.80.
Second.
Motion and second, any further discussion? None, voting?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right.
Thanks, Mark.
We have a change order, huh?
Yes, unfortunately, our County Road 1 hot mix in place recycle asphalt project has incurred some damage. I believe I had forwarded on, I hope you guys received the images of the damage. We do not believe that this is a repair expense that should be put towards the contractors. It was a resident or someone along the roadway that damaged the roadway. We are unsure exactly what happened, but very clearly somebody came through and dug deep divots into our roadway. So I am requesting that you approve the repair, and we will get that underway today at a cost of $13,823.40.
I do have a couple of questions, just out of curiosity. Obviously, the road had not cooled sufficiently to have been opened for, probably to be open for travel, so what?
I unfortunately am not entirely sure what happened. They did feel comfortable opening that roadway. There's been several, the contractor as well as the inspectors, they felt comfortable opening the roadway. It was open. There are several reports that somebody was loading very heavy equipment into a trailer. It obviously drug down the roadway. Additionally, it appears that fuel or some type of fluids were spilled onto the roadway. So something happened there that is not normal practice to have been drugged down an asphalt road, and it clearly did some damage.
And efforts are underway to identify who that someone was?
We're doing the best we can. We have not had many people come forward.
We've turned over all the information we have to the sheriff's office to look into it, and hopefully they can track someone down.
I mean, it just, as I looked at the at the pictures and didn't get a chance to drive down there, but as I looked at it, yes, the divots that were something very heavy is one thing, but also it looked like there was some peel out or something. Should not, if the surface had been cooled sufficiently, and I think that probably in that heating process, it's in excess of what normally asphalt arrives onto a job site to be laid. And so it's going to take longer for it to cool.
I think.
And there does not appear to be any additional damage, any rutting, any additional damage from any other vehicle except for this single vehicle. So as he said, it's hard to speculate exactly what happened. It happened after construction crews had left. As I said, there have been...
Definitely looks like something was unloaded or loaded or whatever. I mean...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I drove down there.
So the contractors okayed the road being opened, and you said the inspectors also, that was the county inspectors? Or who?
It was a hired inspector, MHS.
Pretty much just a moving work zone, is all it is.
I assumed the trailer came unhitched. And the
That's what it looked
gouges,
like, didn't it?
yeah, the gouges you see are the leveling jacks under the front of the trailer.
That's kind of what it looks like.
And the weight,
Man, you'd have
something
think
heavy on
somebody
it.
would have seen something there, as long as
Yeah.
that would have been to get hooked
To get it
back
down.
up.
I bet he got it hooked back up pretty quick and got out of there.
Yeah. Any other questions, Lauren? I'll entertain a motion to approve the change order, authorize the repairs for County Road 1.
Motion to approve the change order, authorize repairs required for damage to County Road 1 not to exceed $13,823.40.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Can,
Yes.
can we, I mean, again, it's a project that's underway,
Mhm.
and whether this is something that needs to be addressed in our contracts, but it would seem like there should be some shared responsibility, if
Right.
nothing else. I mean, this wasn't a completed project that everybody had signed off on. And I don't know who, not suggesting that the contractor was the one moving equipment, but clearly they are moving large equipment in and out of there. This wasn't them, I'm sure, but at the end of the day, still their responsibility on an active project.
Yes, and we have a few other punch list items that we are having them address that have gone throughout, but we did feel that this one was clearly a different situation. We certainly don't expect the county to take on all costs from anything that we disagree on to be incomplete, but this seemed to be unusual.
It's really expensive for
Right.
completely remobilized, but that's...
Yeah.
So I have a question for Mr. Paris. If this person was identified, what's the state law, what's the liability that would be imputed? Would there be any liability?
Well, Commissioner Stephen, I'm not your county attorney, so as far as there is a criminal statute that deals with damage to highways. So it can be prosecuted possibly as a criminal offense. If this were an accident, I would be hopeful that the person responsible would contact the county to make arrangements to compensate the county for the damage. We do believe there was a witness and that eventually this person responsible will be identified. It'd be better if they came forward. Barring that, though, the county will take efforts to recover its costs on this.
Thank you.
And I've had this happen pulling farm equipment, and my insurance company covered the cost repairs to the property. So it's probably what would happen if they figured out who it was and they had insurance. But I told them that I did it.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
You mean you came forward and did the right thing?
Yeah.
Oh, doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Novel.
No good deed goes unpunished.
You gotta find them.
I just think
Okay.
they're asking too much, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Lauren. You're ready for planning and zoning.
Good morning.
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 This is case number DEV 19064, the renewal of a special use permit for a small limited business, Skyline Screen Printing. The business has been in operation since 2002, and the permit was last renewed in 2014. The business is operated out of a 40 by 70 building that was permitted and constructed for business operations. They receive and generate up to 3 deliveries a week. The applicants are the only employees, and the printing activities do not produce sound or odors outside of the building. The Planning Commission voted 9-0 to recommend approval of this case, subject to conditions. The applicant is present to answer any questions, and this is Resolution 2019-22. Thank you.
I'll open up the public hearing on this. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of this special use permit? Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this special use permit? I'll speak in favor of it. I drove by it. I drove by it many a times, didn't know there was a business there. I just thought he had a nice shop with an air conditioning in it. So we'll close the public hearing on this, and I'll consider a motion to approve Resolution 2019-22.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the resolution? On the Skyline screen printing? Voting?
Aye.
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 Good morning, Commissioners. I'm sad to say this is Krista's last day with the county, so
Oh, really?
we'll definitely miss her.
She's leaving.
Thank you.
So am I. Glad to hear that.
Well, good luck.
Best of luck.
Good luck.
Krista, congratulations.
You got out alive.
You made
We
it.
haven't done that yet, have we?
No.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This is resolution number 2019-23, pardon me. This is a request to amend the Leavenworth County zoning and subdivision regulations. There are several amendments to this. I will try to go through them quickly and succinctly, but stop me if you have any questions. The request is to amend Article 22, special use permits and temporary use permits. This is simply due to the commission changing from a 3-member board to a 5-member board. It is in regard to the protest petition. Our regulations in the very last sentence there used to say that a permit is such permit shall not be approved except by unanimous vote, because we had a 3-member commission. It's now a 3/4 vote, which puts it in line with the state statute. Obviously, you couldn't have a 3/4 vote previously, so we just had unanimous. So we're changing that to a 3/4 vote. We are doing the same in Article 31. That is for rezonings. So again, that is just changing from a unanimous vote to a 3/4 vote, just to put it in line with the state statute.
So it's still 4 out of 5 then?
Correct, yeah. It used to be 3 out of 3, right? Because we had 3 members, so
Okay.
that's why it was a unanimous. So those two things, just to get those out of the way. And then we have also looked at Article 22 in regards to temporary special use permits. We've had significant discussion with the board on removing some requirements that cases, especially things like races, fun runs, the library run, and those sorts of things come before the board. And instead, those could just be approved at a staff level after they had provided all the information that they needed to provide. Those are the changes that we have made. We have essentially created different types, if you will, of uses, types of uses which are less impactful on surrounding property owners, or things like the fireworks stands and such that happen the same place every year, the same time. They would just need to come into our office, give us all of the requirements, and then we would be able to sign off at an administrative level. Items which are more industrial in use or have a greater impact on surrounding property owners, like an asphalt plan or a batching plan or a lay-down yard, something like that, those would still need to come before the board in order to be approved. So those are the changes that we have made to the temporary special use permit procedures. And then finally, in this section of changes, we are also amending Article 50, which is minimum subdivision design standards and general requirements. Previously, we had a maximum length for cul-de-sacs in subdivisions, depending upon the subdivision type. We have removed the length requirement. So we just struck item 1. There's no longer a maximum length. It would be up to the developer, of course, up to the Board of County Commissioners. The Planning Commission voted 9-0 to approve these recommended changes. We're obviously also recommending approval to these recommended changes. This is a public hearing item. We'll answer any questions you may have.
Well, I think it's great progress. There was also, I think there's been at least a couple more items that we've all at least discussed and agreed to, but they weren't included, and I was curious as to why.
They were. The private road, I assume, is what you may be talking about.
Well, we've talked about the private road, we've talked about the 5 and 2.5.
Right, so we took forward also the private road to the Planning Commission. They had some changes they asked us to make, so we're taking that back to them. So that was originally in here, but we took that part of it out. So we are moving through the regulations, the changes that you all have presented to us that you would like to see.
So there's still more coming?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're trying to not overwhelm the Planning Commission with dozens of changes at a time, so.
Okay. So we will see those next month, given they meet monthly.
Next week, we'll go to the Planning Commission meeting.
Well, we'll be up here to vote for it, but.
Yeah. Well, I'll open the public hearing portion up of the amendments to, well, we'll just call it streamlining planning and zoning, I guess. The proposed amendments to the Leavenworth County zoning and subdivision regulations. Anyone here wishing to speak in opposition of any of these changes? Anyone wishing to speak in favor of any of these proposed amendments? Mr. Herring? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion.
I just, another quick item. So I guess I'm still kind of, I'm sure it's just I'm dense. Why the 3/4? I mean, most anything that comes in front of the board, a 3-5 vote carries the motion. Why does it need to be 4 out of 5?
For a protest, a valid protest petition, and this changes it to be in uniformity with the state statute.
Okay.
Before we said unanimous, even though the state statute was a 3/4 vote, we couldn't have a 3/4 vote under a 3-commission board.
Right, okay. All right.
And it's 20% of the property owners within the 1,000 feet.
Correct.
If they file a protest decision within 14 days of the meeting of your planning commission, then.
Public hearing.
Of the public hearing, then that triggers the requirement for 4 votes as opposed to 3.
It was actually a question I had last week. This protest petition got brought up. How many signatures does it take? Like, what constitutes? 5 people can sign a piece of paper. Like, I just wanted an education from the attorney last week.
Commissioner Shimke, members of the commission, the provision for a protest petition, which then, if valid, results in the requirement of a supermajority, in this case, the state legislature has set it at 3/4 votes, is a creature of the legislature that was made part of the zoning regulations. Your internal regulations simply mirror that state law. The protest petition, there are parameters for it. I believe 20% of the property owners need to sign it. What other requirements?
20% of land area.
20% of the land area, excuse me. So it requires some looking at. I will say this, your staff in the past, and I have no reason to believe they won't do it in the future, assists property owners when they visit their office if they wish to file a protest petition in informing them what they would need to do to submit one. But the 3/4 requirement is set by state law.
And they went to area instead of number of property owners, 20% of the area. Because in prior years, somebody that owned some property would just deed a bunch of 1-acre tracts to their family, and they'd come out with more people. So that's why they went to area instead of number of owners.
Yeah, so depending upon density of population in that area, it could indeed be one person signing a protest.
Right, that was where I was trying to go to.
Yes, that depending again upon the density, that could absolutely be the case. One person could.
Yeah.
Hey, Commissioner Shimke, again, well, with respect to this, it's 3/4 vote of the membership of the board, not a quorum. So in the event of a protest petition, it takes 4 affirmative votes on the board to pass the special use permit or the rezoning.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution 2019-23.
I move that we approve Resolution 2019-23, amending Articles 3, 22, 31, and 50 of the 2006 Leavenworth County zoning and subdivision regulations.
Second.
A motion, a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Morning.
A month ago, the Commission received a complaint about an event barn in the county regarding traffic. So, Planning and Zoning Department, Melissa Johnson, Code Enforcement Officer, went out there on a Saturday and she counted the cars, the number of vehicles within the property, and it came out to be 127. If you look at the conditions, there is one condition that limits the number of vehicles to 125. So it's pretty close to that number. Again, there were like 2 delivery vehicles there, so it's in line with the conditions. We also looked at the condition of the roads. They're like 211th Street and Donahue. 211th Street, it's like a mile to pave the entire roadway, and Donahue it's like half a mile. So the cost would come up to like $100,000 just to do the paving of the streets.
There's also chemical dust control in the interim.
That's something we can look into as well.
And that's, what was that running this year? Is it $1? I don't know. Being the county doesn't do it, they have to hire.
Aaron's not here, is he?
Well, so you're saying?
I think what we wanted to do is review their original application, make sure they were in compliance with that application.
And reviewing if they are in compliance.
And they are in compliance.
They did exactly what they said their business was going to do.
Yes.
This falls on the county. The county approved this with these conditions. It doesn't fall on the applicant. If somebody comes in here and gets 3 commissioners to vote that says that you don't have to fix the road or do any dust control or anything like that, the business is off the hook. I mean, he's the number of cars, he's right in where he said he would be. And he built a building like he said he was going to build, and it is a successful business. Any dust control, like I said, I think it's on the county, whether it be chemical or get the traffic counts in the future, that if it meets the threshold of paying for paving it, then it's the county's.
I thought
that
SUPs were kind of
He's got 10 years before
Yeah.
it comes up again. So.
Well, but I thought they were reviewable every year, actually. If there were conditions.
They are reviewable if they're not meeting the conditions of it, but they are meeting their conditions in this
I
case.
think they can be revoked at any time if they're not meeting the
If they're not meeting their
conditions.
conditions.
It's not annually.
Right, but they are meeting their conditions. And
But, so the nature of the SUP is not if we notice something we didn't think of
No.
as we go.
No, we thought about it and they discussed it in depth, so
Okay.
there didn't need to be any road improvement.
Okay.
So let me ask a question. If we, let's just say, the scenario, let's say that we found that the traffic was 300 cars. Then what potential action would the court then be privy to?
In that event, Commissioner, the applicant would be in violation of the terms of the special use permit, and the board would conduct a hearing as to whether to revoke the special use permit or allow some amendment of the special use permit.
Would it make sense to just, put together a report that would explain, again, there's multiple options. I mean, there's always do nothing. There is a chemical application, or, this would apply no different than any other project if the residents, who are the ones that are largely contacting us, would like to get on the list at $13 a linear foot, over a 5-year period, something they could review, right?
Right, that is obviously one of the options that's available to them, and I believe we've probably mentioned that in here a few times, but, you know, the 125 cars on an occasional weekend, I don't think they're booking every weekend. If they are, they're a very successful venue, but it probably doesn't raise the traffic count to the point where it changes where they lay on our future projects at 125 cars on a weekend type thing. But it's obviously an inconvenience for some of the people who live out there. But we have an event that occurs in the south end of the county every year, coming up here probably.
Already started.
Already started, yeah. That generates a lot more traffic, and there's, you know, so these things happen. I do think if the traffic were in excess of what their permit was, we could go back to them, but at this point, there's no, there's nothing on the property owner, I guess, is just what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think just sometimes it's helpful not knowing how many different property owners or parcels there are, how those expenses could maybe be allocated. Maybe it's palatable for them, maybe it's not.
Well, the trouble is, there's no houses on Donahue between Donahue and 211. Now, 211, there's houses.
Has this been a consistent, have we had multiple complaints, or is this the first time we've had a complaint?
It's just one property owner who's making the.
Has it been
Several.
over several years?
It's been 2016, I believe, when it opened.
Yes, yeah, they've contacted us several times.
That, like I said, any dust control or anything we do, you can't go back on the business. It's got to be the
No
county.
doubt, but I'm saying they may want to share in that expense, right? If it's
Yeah.
broken up against the
Oh,
property
the
owners.
property, or the business, yeah.
Mhm.
Is it?
And Donahue's not,
I've
maybe
been
it's much of a
to,
concern.
I've been
for the
to
houses
events
there.
last winter. It was kind of nasty out there. The road was pretty muddy.
That's all roads.
Yeah, I know, but
Both sides.
there was a,
That's about there, man.
actually, I don't think I've been to an event on the weekend. It's all been during the week. You know, went there a couple times, different things. So are we going, any thoughts on contacting people on that area about what we can do for chip sealing? 1380 this year? Sound right?
I think it's 1350, but 1350, 1380.
13, okay. Half a mile. That's only going to catch it on Donahue. It's not going to catch it on 211 where all the homes are.
Which is probably the
That's,
most greatest area.
but I'd say the bulk of the traffic comes off of Donahue. It doesn't go down. I mean, there is people that use 211 to get there, but I'd say most of it comes off of County Road 9, which is 207th Street down
Yeah.
Donahue. Chemical dust control would help. It may not have to be the whole distance of the road either. It'd be just right there at the event center and the intersection at 211.
That is, again, an option that the property owners in that area have at their disposal.
Any thoughts, Mr. Culverson? I know you've been out to the facility.
Yeah, I was just hoping we could come to a happy medium, maybe. I mean, I know now I understand the SUP rules, but I mean, if, you know, you don't want to sit there and count one car over, oh, you broke the rule. You know, I mean, that's not really realistic, but I would think, you know, the owners might
Want to
share.
go cost share?
Yeah, and just the, like you're talking about, just the chemical in front of the, just really in front of the house, you know how they usually just do.
Have you spoken with
The
them at
dust
all?
in front of the
Yeah,
house.
just talking to Mr. Peterson, he's very willing to, work with us, so, I can ask that question.
Suggest.
Why don't we just try to figure, why don't we not have any kind of, I don't think that we.
We don't
make
vote on
anything.
anything
Yeah, I mean,
here. We're
but I'm just
we're
saying, I think I would
discussing.
recommend that we go back and talk with him and find out what he's
they can
willing
do, yes.
to do. And I think that the individual who is concerned over the dust, that, you know,
I think that's what it boils
what
down
is
to.
it that they're looking, what is it?
I think what you have is an issue that the property owners out there need to resolve amongst themselves because it's going to take cooperation on them. There's
Right.
nothing that we can legislate them to do.
Right.
We can't
Right.
require that they do anything other than what they've already done. So-
No, and I don't want to assume we haven't been as helpful as we could be, but I think sometimes going the extra mile to say, again, if you look at the linear feet of all the property owners that are impacted, what our options are, what those costs would be. See, and then again, present it to the business owner, see maybe what of those costs they'd be willing to pick up and what that difference is. So rather than letting them come to the conclusion on their own, maybe we could help to steer a particular direction.
Yeah, I was going to suggest if you could reach out to Peterson and ask him maybe split the cost with the one house that really has the dust problem, just for a section in front of the house. You know, they don't do the whole road.
Well, it wouldn't hurt to do that intersection here.
Yeah, and that's right by the house
Right,
too.
right.
So,
You can
you
definitely.
know, 100 feet in both directions at the intersection. It sounds like he would be willing to do something like that. So you can
Yeah, he
explain
was-
to him that we can't really do anything, but
Yeah, he wants to work with us.
Okay.
because I'm
You'll
sure he
bring us
wants to make
back
the neighbors
something.
happy.
You'll bring us back something.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
all
you.
right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
LCDC.
Morning.
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 PowerPoint, let's see. I did not. Okay.
We've got the printout, yeah.
We got the printout. I can make hand copies if I have to.
If you don't have the PowerPoint, do you have the, is there internet connectivity?
There should be.
Okay, well, let's just go through the presentation. You all have that, right?
Yeah, we have it.
Okay, well, and I would say, this is Lisa Hack, you know.
Morning.
I think you know Lisa and Jeremy Greenemeyer and Brian Habian, I think are, they're in the back of the room, both on my executive committee, officers of LCDC. The first quarterly report on June 5th, I threw a lot of stuff at you. And I think I was talking as fast as I possibly could, and I still think we ran into your lunches, so apologize for that. But it was the first one in a long time where we had sat down with the Board of County Commission, and so I wanted to go through workforce data and economic, the economic development data. In this presentation, I wanted to really make it an update of some of the stuff we already covered. And so we're going to talk about the pipeline of projects, because I know you're interested in that, and then also what Lisa's doing on business retention expansion. So that first slide in the BRE program, at least the week that I put this together last week, we had done 44 existing business visits to date in 2019. And last year, I'm trying to remember, did we do 80? We may not hit the 80, but that's a couple reasons. Lisa's focused on some individual businesses like Holyfield Winery. We're doing a lot of heavy lifting on the grant, the USDA grant on that one. That's a time sucker, as well as I've asked her to step up on some of these RFIs and RFPs for existing or for business recruitment projects. And so her focus on existing business visits is split a little bit. But those 44 existing business visits, there are 10 companies that you've been working pretty closely with that has resulted in either grants, loan, or tax savings just this year
of $1.5 million, $1,531,240. If you add that to the 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, we're up to about $8.5 million in savings to Leavenworth County companies. The capital investments back to 2019 projects, those 10, capital investment in those 10 projects is over $15 million, and it resulted in 29 new jobs and 52 retained jobs. On the next slide, business recruitment, marketing, and assistance. In 2019, we have about 43 leads to date. We have been as few as 60 in the past several years and as high as 86 in 2017. 24 of the 43 we have submitted something for. So I think I had a slide last time about why, of the half that we don't submit for, what are the reasons? Rail, lack of rail, lack of zoning for, or maybe even, we may not even want to submit for a heavy industrial user, but there are a variety of reasons we don't have the right product. But half of them we do, or over half, 24 of the 43. We've had 3 visits and then 1 location, and the location's pretty small. It's just, we helped a company, Mr. Breeze, find space in the Eisenhower building where we're in at 13th Street. Commerce, you see over on the right-hand side, Commerce has 11 projects. KCADC, 15 leads from KCADC. 13 have come directly from our own sources. And then the City, Chamber, and Main Street have resulted in 4 projects, or actually 4 leads that we have pursued. Now, on the next slide, at the beginning of the pipeline, these are active recruitment projects. This first one, I was actually out of the country when it came in, either right before or right as I was leaving just a few weeks ago. It was a project from the Kansas Department of Commerce. They needed 20 acres to build a 400,000 square foot facility. I think the job totals may have been, they were in the several hundreds, maybe as high as 400. And there was a pretty lengthy RFI for both the Leavenworth and the Tonganoxie business parks. And Lisa did a tremendous job of reaching out to the right people. We don't have all the answers. A lot of this is utilities. There have been some discussion about the utilities this morning. We need really good data, information on where the gas line is, what the pressure is, how much volume there is. Same way with fiber, 3-phase electric, water, storm sewer. There's a lot of information that we have to pull together. So it's assembling from the team the right kind of information to fill out the RFI. And typically the RFI is, the first part of it is an Excel spreadsheet that may be 8 pages, a dozen pages of some pretty good detail, and then several hundred pages of attachments. This particular project, the RFI commented that the company wanted to partner with the community on building a building. Well, we're not exactly sure what that meant, but we reached out to one of our board members or investors in LCDC, McCown Gordon, and they reached out to Van Trust and submitted a proposal to actually build a building and lease it back. So they can find their own builder. We can provide a list of builders if they come and want to own their own building. But if they want somebody to build the building for them, we've got that in our toolbox to offer so that they could lease that in a long-term lease from a builder willing to put up a 400,000 square foot facility. Project Eames, the next one, also came from the Kansas Department of Commerce. Interesting one because they need quite a bit of space, 14 to 16 acres. There are not a lot of jobs, and so there would potentially, this is a company that could grow. If it doesn't, it may be kind of borderline because if we give up 15 acres for 15 jobs, that's a lot of space for a handful of jobs. But we want to have that conversation with the company, and so after talking to the Leavenworth City Manager as well as the Tonganoxie City Manager, Tonganoxie said, let's put our hat in the ring, and so we have submitted the Tonganoxie Business Park. They need outside storage, of course, and that is a park that really, particularly with Unilock and the way they're structured with the yard, the 16 acres they're currently on, allow for that if you build a berm or have some fencing, and so this may be a project that would fit great in the Tonganoxie Business Park. They needed to be, it's interesting, they needed to be within 20 miles of 50,000 acres of corn. And so we got out the old corn map and looked at the, yes, there is one, and the Corn Association puts out, and in the north and west, we are surrounded by some counties that have some heavy corn planted, as well as Leavenworth County is not too bad, about I think 25,000 acres of corn. Wyandotte and Johnson not so much, but add it all up, and we thought there was a significant amount of corn in the area that we could submit. Project Marshmallow was another commerce project. They were typically, a lot of these companies are looking for buildings first and then land second. They're looking for a 50,000 square foot building. If they can't find one, then they'll look at 3 to 5 acre sites, and we have several of those. But they needed it within 20 miles of KCI, and so we submitted the Gary Carlson Park, and we've got a couple of really nice sites in Gary Carlson left, as well as the new Leavenworth Park.
Steve,
Next,
real
yeah,
quick,
go ahead.
In the two parks, utility dependencies, I mean, I'm assuming on what we're, there's minimal in Tonganoxie, but even in Leavenworth, as you guys are doing the, completing these RFIs, how far are you along? I mean, I feel like I was at a meeting where you said, we feel really good about knowing all these locations because the work was so recent, say at the Leavenworth, industrial park, but just in general, how often is that, conflict? Either we don't know where it's at, or just because I'm harping on utilities today, or they're not there, period.
With regard to any properties?
Well, no, I'm talking about specifically the industrial parks. When you're talking about storm sewer, if you're talking about sewer, if you're talking about gas, right, all of, yeah.
We know so much information on the two new parks, which is a good thing, because we've all spent a lot of money.
Right, but part of what you know is it doesn't exist. You know where you can go connect from. What I'm saying is it's not at the site.
Well, if it is, the property in the new Leavenworth Park runs all the way on 14th Street around the cul-de-sac and on the other side of the cul-de-sac, with the exception of water that comes around the north side of the 80 acres, comes down the west side in between the Riley homes, and then cuts in at an angle to the cul-de-sac. So it's about as close to every single lot as you can get in the Leavenworth Park. It's a little different in Tonganoxie, but it's so close that we're not talking very far. What they're not concerned about 50 yards or 100 yards. They're concerned about a mile down the road.
Sure.
And the promise of a community that, oh, we'll extend it, and it's like, well, how long is that going to take, and how much is that going to cost? So when the Port Authority paid $290,000 a few years ago, 2013, to extend gas line from 12th Street in Tonganoxie down 2440 to help the city connect with the Army Reserve Center, and then send it underneath 2440 to the corner of the park. We were about as close as we needed to be, but we're further than that now. So we're on the interior roads of the park. So yeah, I feel pretty good about where we are with utilities. Now, the capacity on the Tonganoxie Park is not as great in some instances, electric and gas, as it is in the Leavenworth Park. But we haven't gotten involved in a project yet where a company has said, we're coming, but you have to upgrade your gas, or we're coming, but you have to upgrade your electric power capacity. We have had those discussions with both the gas company and electric, and depending upon the usage, we have some indication that the utility would pay for that.
Okay, so we haven't had any RFIs that we couldn't submit, or those that we've submitted that ultimately were killed because we don't have.
Right.
We don't meet their requirements. That was my question, I guess.
Right, okay. Yeah. Project Summit on the next page, 30 acres for a 350,000 square foot building. We submitted the RFI, and what we did a little differently here was to show how a 350,000 square foot building might fit in these two parks. And so we turned to GBA, and they placed that 350,000 square foot building, or a 350,000 square foot building, on the 31 acre parcel in the northeast corner at the end of the cul-de-sac in Tonganoxie. And then Leavenworth has not been platted, so we got a lot of flexibility there. And so we showed that 350,000 square foot building in the northeast corner as well of the park here. And I think that helps, and we got Bartlett and West to help us on that. And those companies are giving us their engineering services for free in hopes that at some point there may be some business out of it, but we can partner with our investors, the engineering companies and construction companies, to help us put these proposals together. Project Petal and Project Silver Rhino, both of those projects are not focused right now on Leavenworth County, but none have been eliminated yet. The Project Petal was something we submitted a couple months ago, 50 to 60 acre greenfield site. They needed a 520,000 square foot building that was expandable to 700,000. We submitted both the two new parks. They're focused, my understanding, they're focused on one community that's not us, but that none have been eliminated. So if that one community doesn't work, then we're back in the game with Project Petal. Same thing with Silver Rhino. They were looking at a 10,000 square foot building or a 10 acre greenfield site, and we proposed Gary Carlson, Abels Field, and the Tonganoxie Business Park. And we're told that they're first considering existing buildings, and if they can't find the right building, then they may come back to us. And that's a KAAZ project. Project Winter is one that we sourced ourselves. They're interested in building a 100,000 square foot facility in Leavenworth. We met with the company, Paul Kramer and I did, to discuss several options. And then the company met with the state of Kansas yesterday and Mamtech to talk about their operations. And we're excited about that opportunity. We think it's real, and sometime in the next year may occur. Same thing with Project Franklin, also around 100,000 square foot building, could be 80, could be 120. The company is currently working on options and has hired its own architect to do renderings specifically for the Leavenworth Park. So, and this will be something that they could present to their board. Project Steel 2.0, this is the training facility we've talked about for quite a while, and Urban Hess interested in 4 lots. And so we drafted an option for the company. We're ready to sign it on those 4 lots. We've discounted the land, and we're balls in their court waiting on the assigned option to come back. Next project was Project West, and Lisa handled that. This was an interesting project because they contacted us directly. I got an email. I think Lisa got an email. George got an email at info leaveworks.tonganoxie.org and went to the city manager, and then Taylor Tedder with the city of Leavenworth got emails. So we all got emails, and we all put our heads together because we do talk sometimes every day. And this came in August 4th, and they told us that they were interested. It's a manufacturing facility, light manufacturing, interested in Leavenworth and Tonganoxie, and they needed 3 to 5 acres to build a 10,000 square foot facility. Bad news is they're still got 2 or 3 years on a lease in another state, but they were interested in coming to the Kansas City area, center of the country, and you had discussions with them, and you showed them several parks.
Right. So they came out to look, and we talked. Well, they liked particularly that our location in the center of the United States can allow them to ship within 2 days anywhere in the United States. So that was really significant to them. I took them on a drive through the Gary Carlson Park, then through the Leavenworth Business and Technology Park, then the Urban Hess in Tonganoxie, and then the Tonganoxie Business Park. And so the nice thing about the lease, I mean, the one thing that they think they're the last year of that 3-year lease that they still have will be some overlap. So they'll be coming in during the beginning of that 3rd year, hopefully, and shutting down the existing building or existing business.
But the first time we heard about them was August 4th, and they were in Kansas City on August 12th. So I think they're pretty serious, so we're excited about that project, particularly when you don't have a site location consultant in the middle. You're dealing with the company, and you can develop a rapport. And so appreciate Lisa working on that project. And then we provided Baser, city manager, with some information. There's a non-private sector project in Baser, and the realtor was interested through the city to provide the group, the facility, with some demographic information, and we got tons, and so we submitted that to the city to pass on. Yes?
On the demographic information, I think you and I once upon a time talked about how maybe dated some of the demographic workforce information or studies that have been completed are, and then it might be time to look at doing a new study.
Yes. In 2009, we did a labor shed study. Now, there is some information. We got a lot of information, ESRI data on our website. We can pinpoint an address and tell you how many people live, how many households, what the household income is, what the ages are of the people within a mile, 3 miles, 5 miles, 13 miles, 2 miles, in a variety of ways. So we have that information. But in 2009, what we did was hired the Docking Institute at Fort Hays State to call about a universe of about 650 people. First of all, they had to identify what the labor shed was, what zip by zip code, where our labor force goes to work, and where we draw upon. So we did that, and it showed about 370,000 people in our labor shed who were working, and there were quite a few people, maybe as many as 25,000, who would be interested in looking for a job, changing jobs, upgrade, different jobs, and we've had some compliments about that data from site consultants who've seen it. So it's a specialty that Fort Hays State does. Now, we updated it, that 2009 in 2012, and we updated it again in 2015. We haven't updated it yet, and it needs updating now because it's really not useful to us now. So it's something that we've tried to budget for, and it's this balance between, do you spend it on marketing or do you spend it on the labor shed study, and it's a discussion we're going to need to make with the LCDC board here soon. And let's see, a couple more. Project Clean, this is a commercial investor interested in 1 to 2 acres in Leavenworth and Lansing along K7. So we toured the corridor with Matt Schmitz and Taylor Tedder. We made the handoff near Eisenhower, and there are several really good options for this commercial investor from an out-of-county commercial investor who's pretty familiar with our community. And so that's something that looks like it may happen, and we may have some news on that in the next few months. And then Project Madison, interestingly enough, was something that we were approached by a commercial firm back in 2015. And this is a long-term process with the company's board and thinking about where a Lansing location might fit. They only need an acre for retail presence, and that project started in September of 2015, and now they're working with an engineering firm on a specific lot. So our role was up front identifying 9 properties, of which they narrowed to 3, and now it's 1. And we should have an announcement on that here also in the next few months. The next slide, which I think is by, we've only got 2 or 3 more slides. There was a question from Commissioner STIEBEN last time I was here in June about that Newmark Grubb Zimmer study, expectations for a new business park. The city of Leavenworth hired Zimmer to help assist in benchmarking other, like just outside the 435 loop, Douglas County and Miami County, Ottawa, Franklin County, Platte County, what our expectations ought to be. And this was only 1 page out of many in the study, but an interesting page. It was the last page. And their expectations for the new business park, for us, what they were informing us was that we ought to get, as a community or LCDC, an inquiry per quarter for a new business park. And so what I thought I would do is just go back at these projects and see how many came to us directly or through our own sources, where somebody said, like Project West, where we get a contact and they say, tell us about your communities. So Project Lock was one of those, Unilock in Tonganoxie in 2016, and then in 2018 we had Project Push, Galaxy, Project 32, Project Oz, Project Winter, Project Franklin that we're still working on, and then also Project West. And then we were told by the Zimmer folks that these KCADC state projects, the big projects, we ought to have at least 1 response to the state in KCADC every 6 months. And we are way above that. Superior, Trigger, and Gear, and Precision were all projects that came in 2018. Project Spark, we showed both the Leavenworth and Tonganoxie parks in 2018. Project Levitt was the USDA project. Project Petal that we talked about, Project Silver Rhino, Project Summit, Eames, Project Local, and Project Marshmallow, and several of those are still active. Then what the Zimmer folks said is that we ought to have a site visit every year. Well, Unilock did a site visit, several, before they located. Project Trigger and Gear came in 2018, as did Project Precision. We had 3 site visits from Project Precision. Project Winter, Project Franklin, Project West have all seen different sites in the county. And then we ought to become a finalist for relocation every 18 months. Unilock, we were a finalist, obviously, in Tonganoxie. Project Precision, we were in Leavenworth in 2019, one of, I believe, 4. And then completed deals, complete a new project every 24 months. The Unilock location happened in 2018. So I know my board is excited about the fact that we're in the game now. There were indications to us that sometimes we're trying to throw our hat in the ring just to get people's attention, even though before we invested all this money and you all invested money in the 2 new parks, utilities might not be there, Commissioner Shemke, but we were out there pitching. Well, now we have properties on all these projects that would fit. So now it's just a matter of competing beyond that. So that's just a slide to kind of let you know where we think we are in this process and in the pipeline, keeping the pipeline filled. The next slide is just the new spec building program. We talked about it last time, and the last bullet is the most relevant right now. The developer is still doing due diligence on the facility and the financials, so no update there. And then this last slide, marketing events for the 3rd and 4th quarter of 2019. We were at the Animal Health Homecoming Dinner on August 26th. There were 1,100 people in the room at KCADC, a big event, and we handed out a lot of business cards and talked to some companies and commercial realtors and some lawyers at the Animal Health Day in Kansas City. 2 days later, KCADC holds a real estate council event, so there were realtors in Kansas City at a ball game, and we won. Surprise, surprise. And I had a conversation with an attorney about cybersecurity and what he thinks may be a fit for our area, and so we're following up with him on that. LCDC golf tournament is coming up the 18th. We've got 25 teams, 100 golfers. We'll raise about $7,000, about $5,000 will go toward marketing. So it is a fundraiser. Commerce Secretary Tolan is coming in to tour the county on September 19th, and the 11:30 to 1 o'clock Lansing, we're having an LCDC board meeting at the Lansing Community Center. You all are invited to that. We'll get the word out to a larger group than just our board, because we'd like to have people that want to hear from the State Secretary of Commerce about how we fit in their schemes, would be invited to our board meeting. And we'll make the business part of our board meeting short so we can give the Secretary more time. We have a SIOR event that we'll be attending September 26th. That's the Society of Industrial and Office Realtors. KCADC Site Consultant Premier event. This used to be called the Barbecue Crawl. We'd bring in site consultants from around the country, and the hook was we'll take you to 8 different barbecue restaurants over 2 days. And so we did, and it had been successful. Last year, KCADC did a Chiefs game, and this year it's a concert at the Kauffman Center, which is the hook to bring in a dozen or so national site consultants. And so we'll be a co-sponsor of that, and we'll spend Wednesday night as well as all day and evening on Thursday with those site consultants as a part of the KCADC event. And then Tonganoxie Business Park Real Estate event. We're doing our own, where we're inviting commercial realtors from the Kansas City area. We have a list of about 200. We're working with GBA and obviously the city of Tonganoxie. And that was going to, we were looking at dates in October, and now we've decided just yesterday, November 1 is our go-to date. We'll have some ATVs that we could drive the property. We'll have a tent. We'll have barbecue, the GBA barbecue team, and so GBA will show off their engineering prowess, since they were responsible for designing the park and also building the first Unilock building. And then George and the city will have an opportunity to talk about building other additional building opportunities for some of their clients. And so we're excited about this real estate event November 1 in Tonganoxie. And then I've got a couple of a luncheon and dinner, a couple of events in Chicago and Boston in October and November as a part of Team Kansas. which is a group of business women and businessmen in Kansas, as well as has a partnership with the State Department of Commerce. And so I think we're in for $5,000 is our contribution to that, and with that we get several of these trips. And so we'll pay our airfare out there, but to wine and dine them, that's a part of our co-sponsorship. And then we'll have another 8 to 10 site consultants in Boston, site consultants in Chicago, added to the site consultants that will meet and exchange business cards and email and develop relationships at the KCADC event. So I'm excited about what's in the pipeline. I'm excited about the marketing events we have for the last two quarters. So that's all I had prepared. I took a little more time than I wanted to. I apologize again. Maybe I should just start every presentation with an apology for going on so long. If you want to see website stuff, that's fine. But I will tell you that we have on the home page all the business parks, as well as a mixed-use park in Vassar, as well as the town center space in Lansing, highlighted, linked with some new brochures, and then the business park have drone videos with 3D renderings of buildings that are sized right for the particular lots. And so if somebody's having a hard time visualizing their 10,000, 50,000, or 350,000 square foot building going on any of our properties, then this is a tool that is easily accessible to anybody who has a smartphone or a laptop. So,
Steve, it's Candid, right? Marketing?
Yes.
You guys partner with? I was just curious, are they providing any type of like analytics, whether that's specific to the emails that they're sending out on your behalf, mailers? I don't know that I've seen any of that info, but I probably have just missed it. So I was kind of curious if they do that monthly, quarterly, how they maybe communicate.
Quarterly, yes, and we could certainly share that. And what I may do is, if you'd like, I can send you all copies of the latest update. The Google
yeah, I just think it'd be nice to
Analytics.
get a feel for, you know, those number of impressions. I doubt they're doing much in the way of, or maybe they are, even some social media aspects. I mean, there's a lot of broker dealers that we'd love to get, obviously, the website, those drone videos in front of that are dealing with commercial developers.
Right. We know what pages they go on. We
Right.
know how long they stay. And in some cases, we know the names of the people going on the website.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Jack? Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Thank
Lisa?
you.
Thank you.
Ready for this one?
Okay. Okay. I move that this board recess from open session and go into a closed executive session to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel as justified by KSA 75-4319B1, and that this board resume open session in this meeting room at 11:20 a.m. Present in the executive session will be Commissioners Jeff Culberson, Vicky KAAZ, Doug Smith, Chad Shibke, and Mike Stieben, County Administrator, and Senior County Counselor David Van Paris.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Any further discussion on the executive session? Voting?
Aye.
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 Aye. -4319B1, and that this board resume open session in this meeting room at 11:35 a.m. Present in the executive session will be Commissioners Jeff Culberson, Vicky KAAZ, Doug Smith, Chad Shibke, and Mike Stieben, and County Administrator Mark Lothry.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Any further discussion on the executive session? None, seeing none, voting?
Aye.
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 Let the record show that we've returned to regular session at 11:35. The executive session discussion was limited to non-elected personnel. No decisions were made. Are we ready to adjourn and go to a work session?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Voting?
Aye.
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 All right, we're in a work session now.